MC today. So I have to say, this is the third event I've been to in 4 weeks. And I was at an event last week for California Guided Pathways, and I was standing in the back of the ballroom, and I suddenly realized I was looking at the back of everybody's heads, which I have not done in 2 years. All I've been able to see are fronts of people's faces and frames, and it was so exciting to just look at the backs of everybody's heads. So, like some of you, I'm a little rusty about being up in front of the stage, so I actually have notes, and that way I'll make sure that I cover all the salient points. So I want to start out with some basic housekeeping. We are going to have a packed day, and my hope is that there will be so many good ideas that you will learn that you want to share them far and wide. So be sure that you're putting things in your Twitter feed. We've got 2 hashtags. Oops, they're no longer up there. One is future workforce, and the second is good jobs equity. So please share the knowledge that you're learning here today. The other thing is that you probably want to know how to get to the Wi-Fi. You'll notice that there's yellow cards on your table that will give you the login instructions. If you need to use the restrooms, you just go out to this lobby and head left. And in addition to the restrooms, we have a business center if you need to charge something or take a phone call or something else that comes up during the day. The other thing that I want to do is just to take a moment to thank the staff here at the Marriott, because when we were putting these panels together, we had this embarrassment of riches in that so many people wanted to come present. We basically had to fill in every minute of the day. So the staff are going to be very stealthily going around and giving you food and coffee today, and I want to thank them for their flexibility in working around our program. Yes, let's thank them. All right, so let's talk a little bit about what we're going to be doing today. What we're really digging into is this question of how, in this radically changed economic environment that we're in, are we going to take this opportunity, seize it, to make a difference, to help more people who are underemployed, who took that big risk and left their low-paying, really unrewarding job to do something better, and make sure that they're really on a pathway that's going to get them to sustaining jobs, things that are durable through recessions, things that pay them a family-sustaining wage. And this is going to be meaning that we're looking at all different aspects of this question. So we'll be looking at state and federal policy. We're going to really dig into who these individuals are that we're trying to serve so that we understand it's not some generic population, but there's different groups of people with different needs that we're going to need to tailor our services. We're going to focus in on some sector strategies. We're going to talk about the new and expanded baccalaureate degrees that community colleges are offering, really looking at how we're expanding past short-term training. And we're going to wrap up the day talking about all the different regional opportunities we have to work together, because we really do have to work together if we want to do a better job of serving populations that we haven't really. So I've been working on community college reform efforts for about 20 years and looking specifically at issues of economic mobility for about a decade. And what I notice is when we start having conversations where people start talking about workforce boards or adult education or jobs at all, we silo things off with community colleges. We end up basically talking, say, oh, that's a CTE thing. And we don't integrate it into the broader initiatives that we're working on. And this is something that we really, really have to change, because when we do that, we reinforce the structures in our society that track some people into high-wage jobs and other people into lifeboat jobs. So one of the things that's really interesting when you look at pathways to economic mobility is that the skills that you need to become a manager or a leader or an entrepreneur are normally taught on the gen ed side of the house, not in CTE. So when if you have someone who comes to you who's in the middle of an economic emergency for their family, and they're like, I need a job right now, and you appropriately direct them into a short-term training program, if we're not thinking about how we're going to reach back out to that student and make sure they can come back and keep going toward their dreams, we actually end up perpetuating the status quo. And that's what we really have to dig into today. So luckily, there's a number of initiatives that are rolling right now that I think are going to be really helpful. So the Foundation for Community Colleges is running a program called REACH, Racial Equity and Adult Credentials in Higher Education. And that is being attached to the Guided Pathways Initiative to make sure that when we talk about guided pathways, we're not just talking about people that are just leaving high school and have a goal of going directly into a transfer pathway. There's also the Strengthening Community College grants that are coming out from the Department of Labor right now, very similar scope. There's the K-16 Regional Pathways applications, which hopefully you all were getting in recently. And of course, all of this links to the Vision for Success. So one of the things that was really interesting when we were planning for this event is we were having the hardest time deciding how we were going to refer to the people that we wanted to serve. And we started falling back to all these different terms that we've historically used, like non-traditional student, or adult learner, or dislocated worker. And these are all terms that we use based on our frameworks about how we think about the services that we deliver. But what's really important is that we remember behind every one of those categories is a human being that has hopes and dreams. And so what I hope as we start talking about the big issues like policy and regional partnerships and things like that, that you hold in mind a student, a person that you would like to serve, so that you apply these principles to the reason you get up and do this work every day. And so I want to model this by talking about a student that I had a chance to meet about 4 years ago named Francisco Castillo. So Francisco came to the US as a young child. He was really a star student, really wanted to become an engineer. He was going to be the first in his family to go to college, and he got into the UC of his dreams in an engineering program, and then his hopes were dashed because he learned that he was undocumented, which he did not actually know until that point. And his acceptance was rescinded. So he had to go get a job working under the table because he couldn't legally work. And he figured out a way to raise enough money to go pay out-of-state tuition to go to community college. And that worked for a little while until his father died. And he did the responsible thing. And he just said, I can't try to go to school. All the money has to go to supporting my mom and my 2 siblings. And for 7 years, he did that. He just worked and worked and worked. And his mom was at him every single day. She's like, no. You're an engineer. This is a crappy job. You've got to do something more. And so he finally went and got DACA status, took the risk, was able to work legally, and started going to American River College. And he got into a certificate program where he was basically doing some design work, and he learned things like AutoCAD. And I talked to the faculty who worked with him, and they were always saying he was the star student. He had everything together, even though he had all this stuff going on underneath the surface. He got to do some work-based learning, and he did some work with diesel technology in a state fair competition, and was able to get to a better job. So he did exactly the thing we normally do with our students, where he got up one leg up. So he was working with drones related to keeping cell phone towers intact. And within 5 months, his managers were like, you are a rock star. And so he got elevated to be a manager, but he couldn't figure out how to go back to school. He couldn't figure out how to navigate the systems in the college. And when I talked to him, I said, well, what is your dream? He's like, I still want to be an engineer. Someday I'm going to go back and get a degree. So I've told Francisco's story in a number of different settings, and I've had some really interesting responses when I threw down the challenge that said, why is there not a clear pathway from construction crafts to engineering? Why is that not the first thing we say to people who come and want to go into those programs? Because disproportionately, they are Latin men, right? So the issue that people say back to me is, well, we can't, because I'm sure he hasn't done the right math. Or we can't, because the 4 years are never going to accept the academic merit of our CTE programs. Or even, well, maybe he wanted that, but you haven't met my students. That's not what they're dreaming about. And I challenge you to say, well, maybe if you ask our students, we'll discover that they do have that dream of a bachelor's degree, and we are in the privileged position to be able to figure out how we can help them get there. We are the ones who build the systems. You have the power in your hands to make it possible for students to attain those dreams, and right now, that is the most hopeful thing I can think about. So I want to now introduce Sonia Christian from Kern Community College District. So I had the honor of meeting Sonia a number of years ago when she was moving forward with getting guided pathways implemented in this state. I was busy working with the Community College Chancellor's Office, and she called me up and she said, you need to work on this, because this is the most important way that we're going to get into structural inequities. And of course I listened to her, because we always listen to her. And now she's taking this work to the work at Kern Community College District and around the state and the country, really digging into those structural factors that make a difference for students. So thank you so much.